Good morning, Adam. Thanks a lot for being with us as always.
Thank you guys for being so flexible. And it is a packed weekend. It does feel like one of those bigger weekends in college football. Even though the matchups maybe aren't as flavorful, I still feel like this is one of the more important weekends in college football.
I do too. And you've got a game that just a few years ago would have been the marquee matchup, not just in the SEC, but probably in the nation, and that's Tennessee and Florida. Obviously, a lot of the luster has been lost, but you've got two first-year head coaches trying to establish their programs. This is a huge game, maybe for different reasons than it would have been 10 years ago, but right now, nonetheless, this is a big game between two traditional SEC East powers. And the winner is going to have a lot of momentum, and the loser is going to be scratching their heads trying to figure out what are we going to do the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to describe this matchup and what's different about it, what's important about it. And, like you said, two new head coaches for just, I think, the second time in the rivalry's history, which is kind of amazing to me to consider that. It's such a long-standing rivalry, obviously, and it's a matchup that means so much to so many people, but they haven't had first-year head coaches face each other since 1970. So it's only the second time in about nearly the last half a century. It was Bill Battle and I think it was Doug Dickey for Florida in 1970. Those are the last time that these two teams met off with brand-new head coaches. So what does that mean? This is a tone setter, right? I mean, you guys know Jeremy Pruitt pretty well in Tuscaloosa and the great pedigree defensively that he has. You know Dan Mullen and his propensity to improve offenses and play quarterbacks that seem to develop and get better as time goes on. So I think that's probably the matchup that sticks out. The Tennessee secondary has looked pretty good, granted against lower competition in the last couple of games, but Felipe Franks has looked pretty good at times in a couple of games this year. Granted, the defense for Florida looked pretty bad against Kentucky. So we have a lot of questions, maybe more questions than answers, but I think that's what makes this matchup intriguing this year, maybe more so than it has been in the last couple of years.
No doubt about it. It's going to be an interesting game, and you'll be on the call for that one. That is a 6 p.m. Central Time kick tomorrow night in Knoxville at Neyland Stadium on ESPN. Let's go around the SEC a little bit since we kicked it off with Florida and Tennessee. Obviously, Alabama has been beyond dominant. I mean, they basically have decided all three of their games by the second quarter. But the opposition level goes up a notch. Texas A&M comes in here 2-1, ranked 22nd in the country. Jimbo Fisher has already put his stamp on this team. They had an opportunity to force overtime with Clemson, came up a little bit short, but impressed a lot of people in that game. I think the question around here, and you know how easy it is for fans to get full of themselves when they're watching Alabama do what they're doing, is will this game be competitive in the second half? I have a tendency to think that A&M can certainly hang around longer than these other three teams and maybe get it into the second half and make it competitive and then see how Alabama reacts. What's your take?
Wasn't this the game last year that ended up being the rat poison game?
It was.
David, wasn't this the game last year that got that quote out of him? All the widespread praise about his team and everybody just patting all of his kids on the back and saying how great they were. And he said, that's rat poison. And that's what's dangerous to a good football team because I think Nick Saban's got the right mentality about it. This will be their toughest game. The one thing that I could say that could lessen any fears is that, last week, Ole Miss came in with maybe the most highly touted running wide receiver crew in the country. And they looked pretty good on the first play, and they didn't do a whole lot afterwards. And Texas A&M has some pretty good wide receivers that everybody's been talking about. But if it's anything like Ole Miss, there's not going to be a whole lot to worry about. I just don't know who else is going to challenge Alabama in this conference. Maybe Auburn, and at that point, you're in late November, and maybe Auburn has gotten to that point where they're going to look even better than they've looked in a couple of games already this year. I think maybe that's the biggest challenge looming in front of Alabama, but right now I just don't see it. I think Texas A&M could give them a half. I think they can stay in it longer than Ole Miss did last week, and certainly longer than Louisville and Arkansas State. But I just don't see it yet. I don't know what really to look at for Texas A&M and really feel confident in the fact that they can physically dominate an Alabama team. It's one thing when you had an Alabama team that wanted to run the ball and just keep it on the ground and kind of grind you to death and just physically dominate you on the defensive end, you could get them to make some mistakes on offense. Longer drive, maybe they fumble, maybe you get them into a 3rd and long. You can rush the pass so you can get the ball back. This is a different Alabama offense now with Tua. I mean, Tua looks like the best quarterback in college football right now. The precision throws that he's made, I don't see Texas A&M being able to physically dominate Alabama. And with this offense now, that's what you have to do to beat them. And I just don't see it now. I don't see it this week, and I don't necessarily see it in the coming weeks on Alabama's schedule.
You mentioned Tua. He has been phenomenal. Everything that people expected and more so far. And Jalen Hurts has embraced his role, or at least from a team standpoint, appears to have embraced it. He's played well as the backup. Nick Saban told ESPN's Chris Lowe yesterday for an article that came out late last night that he's going to continue to play both quarterbacks, and that Jalen has done everything he's been asked to do. I think he humanized it a little bit when he said how much Jalen means to him as a coach and how much respect he has for him, and the fact that it is unprecedented that a quarterback 26-2 coming back for his junior season is losing his job. And I think a lot of fans have just wanted, and we've talked about this before, Adam, they just wanted him to kick Jalen to the curb. It's not going to happen. Tua is the starter. He is a phenomenal talent, but Jalen Hurts is a really good quarterback that's accomplished a lot here and is going to have a role on this football team. Why that upsets so many people, Adam, I just don't understand it. Nick Saban's the best in the business. He's going to do what's appropriate, and he's going to make this work. Tua's the starter. Jalen's the backup, but he continues to say that both will have a role, and I believe him. I believed him the entire time. I've never been on that list of people who just says Jalen's going to transfer automatically. And they continue to say, well, he's played 3 games. He's only going to play 4. I think he's going to play throughout the year. I'm curious as to how you see this playing out.
Yeah, I think if Jalen Hurts wanted to transfer, he would have transferred. I don't think anybody's above that at this point, and I think he should be free to do so, and do so without penalty. I'm more and more in big-time college football becoming a proponent for the athlete to have a little bit more leeway because they're not getting paid, and their coaches are allowed to leave at will with guaranteed contracts more often than not, and guaranteed money walking away and being bought out of their deals. So I'm okay with somebody wanting to transfer, and if they want to leave, that's totally fine. And I feel like if he wanted to, he would have, and he could have, and like his dad said in the summer, he would have been the most sought-after free agent in all of college football. And if he still wants to do that, he's welcome to do so, and I would support the kid, and wherever he ended up, I would root for him and hope he does well. And I don't think anybody can really argue that. But if he wants to stay, that's up to him. And if he feels like he has an opportunity, then why not stay? And I don't see anything wrong with that either. If he wants to transfer at the end of the year and go play his final season somewhere, that's fine too. I really don't have much of an issue with what's going on. I think people sometimes feel the necessity to have an opinion on everything. And I think in this case, there's not enough meat there for me to feel like I'm going to get into a rage about what Jalen Hurts is doing or not doing and who Nick Saban is playing or not playing. I feel like I have enough trust in these people now. With Saban's reputation as, like you said, the best coach in college football. I think he knows what he's doing. And I have trust in a kid who's had enough experience to make an adult decision if he wants to. So, yeah, I'm with you on that, Gary. I don't really know why there's a big issue about all this.
Well said. And I've said all along, all these people citing their sources, and they've talked to this person and that person. I think the number one source on this is Nick Saban. And he's been pretty consistent in what he said, and that's pretty much what I've gone by. I've just kind of listened to what the head coach has had to say, and that's where I've come down on this. So it's working well. This is a really strong football team, and Tua is an exceptional talent, maybe one of the best we've ever seen throwing the football, and Jalen Hurts is a proven winner. A couple other games I want to ask you about in the SEC that I think are really interesting. Mississippi State at Kentucky. Here's Kentucky finally getting past Florida. They're 3-0 in the East. Mississippi State looks really strong. Both these teams, I think, have designs, whether they're realistic or not, on winning their divisions. So they're looking at this game and saying there's no way we can afford a loss to this team from the other division and win our division. So Kentucky, I think, at home is looking at it as a must-win. Mississippi State on the road, I think, is looking at it as a must-win. And this could be a really entertaining football game in Lexington.
Yeah, I think Kentucky wants to run the Florida blueprint and just ride Benny Snell. We've been talking about Benny Snell in whispers for the last maybe year and a half. and I think more so in louder tones in the last couple of weeks. And I think rightfully so. I think people are starting to realize that this is an NFL potential back. He'll make an NFL roster at some point, I think, in the future. Whether he's an NFL star, I don't know. I don't really think it matters right now. I think he's a college football stud. I think he's a really good all-SEC type running back. And I think the biggest question is can Kentucky run it against that Mississippi State defense? They've been pretty good early against the run. I think less than 100 yards a game allowed on the ground so far. So will that defense be able to withstand Snell? Because they're going to try to ride him as much as possible. And I think this is a prove-it game. I call this a prove-it game. This is a prove-it game for both of these teams. Mississippi State's off to a really good start. They look good with Nick Fitzgerald back in the fold the last two games after the suspension. And I'm curious to see if they're for real. I think we all had thoughts that this would be a really solid Mississippi State team, even with the coaching change. I know we thought they'd be good offensively with a good quarterback that has experience and a good offensive mind like Joe Moorhead coming in. But I'm sure this is a prove-it game for these two teams, and Kentucky especially. Mark Stoops has been around for a while, and there always have been questions circulating around him, especially after all those losses to Florida these last couple of years. And now you beat Florida. You get that monkey off your back. You're 3-0. It's a big game now. I don't think you can use, I think fans are going to expect a little bit more now. You've beaten Florida. That's the big goal over the course of this streak. That streak's gone. That's not a factor anymore. Now you have to prove yourself. And I think Saturday night's going to be an interesting game, to say the least. We'll have an eye on it while we're at Neyland this weekend for sure.
Mizzou got past Purdue last week. They're 3-0. They'll be at home tomorrow morning in Columbia to host Georgia. Now, I love Drew Lock, and I know you do too. Everybody that watches him knows he's an exceptional talent at quarterback. Georgia is strong. I mean, really strong. And I think this is a game where people want to think Georgia's going to be tested. I just don't see it, Adam. I look at what Purdue was able to do moving the football against this Missouri defense, and I say to myself, my goodness, what's Georgia going to do? I think Missouri will be ready to play. I think it'll be an electric atmosphere, but I think Georgia's way too strong here. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think Drew Lock could have a really good game. I think he could throw for a couple touchdowns. I think he's a guy who's pretty good at avoiding mistakes and throwing bad interceptions, but it may not just be on him. I think the issue is everybody else around Drew Lock, and I don't necessarily even think that's the offense. I think this Missouri defense is going to struggle. I think this Georgia team is getting – it's not there yet, but I think Georgia's getting to that Alabama point where just every week you expect Alabama to put together a really good performance. I mean like an A-level performance every single week. And we expect nothing less, and you have to go out of your way to, as we talked about, physically dominate them to beat them. And like I said, Georgia's not exactly at that kind of robotic ascension point just yet where it's almost like clockwork. It's not there yet. So they're susceptible, they're vulnerable to a couple of things, but I don't see enough flaw in this Georgia team to think, all right, where can Missouri take advantage? I think Drew Lock can have a good game. I think he can beat some of the defenders. I think he can throw over the top and maybe get a couple of big plays in this game. But I just don't see Missouri physically dominating Georgia to the point where this is a close game in the fourth quarter. I think it could be a good half. We've seen Missouri give Georgia some trouble for a half before the last couple of years. But other than that, I don't really see anybody being able to dominate Georgia outside of, like an Alabama or an Auburn. I just don't see it right now. So I think Georgia wins comfortably in the second half.
Final SEC question. Auburn looks to bounce back against what's so far been a hapless Arkansas team, LSU, at home against Louisiana Tech, trying to battle a letdown. Were you surprised that LSU went into Jordan-Hare and just kind of gutted it out and found a way to beat Auburn last Saturday?
No, I don't think I was surprised by that. I was impressed, certainly, more than anything else. And I continue to look at Joe Burrow as a guy who, plays with a chip on his shoulder. Mm-hmm. I appreciate his wherewithal. He's got moxie, he's got gumption, he's got some confidence, but he plays with a chip on his shoulder. I think they've got, as we talked about last week, Gary, a great running back in Nick Brossette, who didn't have a huge game last week. Didn't really get a chance to get really lathered up in that game, but I'm not surprised that they went into one. I thought it'd be a competitive game. I'm impressed. I thought they set themselves up. I thought Auburn had chances in the fourth quarter and what was kind of crazy fourth quarter. But again, good drives, solid play. I think that's enough right now. I just think that tells you more about the SEC early in the season than maybe it does about LSU and Auburn. Like I said, I think they're going to be teams that probably get better as the year goes on compared to an Alabama or a Georgia that have set a pretty high bar to begin with. And I think we're still kind of judging everybody based on the Alabama and Georgia model. Are these playoff teams? And that's natural when you're a year removed from that. Are these playoff caliber teams? And I don't think so. LSU and Auburn, I don't think anybody's shocked by that right now. I think they can get to that point, Auburn specifically, but yeah, I'm not surprised. I thought it'd be a competitive game, and sure enough, it was a competitive game that came down to the wire.
Yeah, one thing I love about Burrow, he's not going to put up great stats, not going to throw for a high percentage, but he can make the plays. He's proven that already when the game is on the line. Nationally, obviously Ohio State's going to murder Tulane, but the big story is that Urban Meyer is back. Ryan Day did a great job, going to pick up nearly a $500,000 bonus for leading the Buckeyes to a 3-0 record. Now, next week, Ohio State has to go to Penn State, and that will be a big one. But just the way this has happened, the way Ohio State handled it, we've discussed that. But the bottom line now is Urban Meyer's back. Ohio State's right where they want to be. They're one of the premier teams in the nation. And as is the case with the news cycle in this country, as much news as it made, in a week or two after he's back coaching, it will settle down and they'll get into their rhythm. So Ohio State's in good shape. And now they've got their leader back. They certainly are a national championship contender. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I think they're the best team in the Big Ten. I don't know how that game's going to go next week at Penn State. I think that could be a really high-scoring game with a little less defense, maybe something like we saw last year. But, yeah, I mean, whether it's fair or not, I don't think it necessarily is fair. I don't think it's necessarily right. But the news cycle is going to go away about Urban Meyer. He's going to come back this week, and it's going to be a Big Ten Network game that not a lot of attention is going to be paid to because Ohio State's going to boat race them, and they'll get all ready to go for next week. And Urban Meyer will already have been there at that point for quite some time, and that story, unfortunately, is going to go away, and it's not going to be an issue anymore. And that's the life cycle of college athletics right now. And if that's fair or not, I don't know. I don't think it is personally, but in terms of just what's going on the field, it's business as usual. They're one of the best teams in college football. They had a ton of talent coming in. We talked about it before, Gary. Mm-hmm. There's nothing different about Ohio State. They got a really good football coach and a really good staff and a really good quarterback and a really good running back and an excellent defense again. Bosa being out obviously hurts them a lot. The Nick Bosa news is tough for them, that he's going to need surgery. But there's nothing about this team that doesn't give me confidence in what they're going to eventually accomplish. Yeah, Penn State could be a hurdle spot, Saturday night game, in-state college. It's going to be an awful atmosphere to play in. I mean, they're so hyped up at Penn State. It's a really tough environment to play in, but they're the most talented team in the Big Ten. I don't really think it's that close right now. Adam
Amin with us from ESPN. He'll be on the call tomorrow evening, Florida at Tennessee on ESPN. A couple other subjects I want to hit on with you. The Baker Mayfield era has kicked off in Cleveland, and I like Hugh Jackson a lot. I think he's a fun guy, an engaging guy, knows offensive football, but I never quite understood the babysitting role that they brought Tyrod Taylor in for. Hugh said, we want to develop Baker. Well, somebody else is going to be developing him if you don't win some games. And it worked out for Cleveland. Certainly unfortunate for Tyrod Taylor that he had to leave that game for concussion protocol, but we saw what we thought we might see from Baker Mayfield. He is one of these guys that is special. He's proven it in college, and he came in last night and he led the Browns to their first win since 2016, and didn't look like a rookie. It was an amazing performance. They're going to lose more games, but clearly this is the best option for them at quarterback. And Adam, the question I want to ask you is, I think Hugh Jackson's a smart guy. I just don't understand why Baker wasn't starting from day one. Your take on that, and then what you saw from Mayfield last night in the victory over the Jets.
Yeah, I think when you bring in a guy like Taylor and you pay him some money, then naturally the tendency is going to want to be to play him. That's not uncommon in the NFL. It's never been uncommon in the NFL, especially in this era. So I'm not going to rail on Hugh Jackson for that. It's easy to say, oh, Mayfield should have been playing from the start. He was going to get a shot. He was the number one pick at some point, and it just happened a little bit earlier than maybe we thought it would be because of the injury and because of the concussion protocol. So I don't think there's anything out of the ordinary here. But once you get the opportunity, you got to go make the most of it. And Baker did. He looked really sharp. Looked very confident. Made some really good throws. I love the 2-point conversion play. Although Hugh Jackson claims that that was always in the back pocket. I don't know whether that's true or not. People had some fun with that this morning, but yeah, I'm not shocked by it. And Mayfield's a confident guy. I thought he'd be a good quarterback. At some point, he was going to get an opportunity this year. He was going to get a chance. And it happened earlier than maybe he thought. He was great. I was impressed.
To baseball, I wanted another NFL question, but I'm going to move on. We're running short on time. The Yankees did everything they could to keep the Red Sox from clinching at Yankee Stadium. If the Red Sox get it done last night, Boston will go into the postseason as the World Series favorite. They're the best team in baseball. Still have to finish it off. But how much extra special do you think it is for the Red Sox to get to clinch at Yankee Stadium?
That's still meaningful, and they're still going to play each other next week, and they could potentially see each other in the playoffs in a wild card scenario or in a division series scenario if the Yankees get out of the wild card game. That only adds to the intrigue of this. Boston's so good. I mean, they've been so good all year. It's a rare air to be in with a 100-win season. Pitching staff's been great. I know Price had some struggles the other night, but their pitching staff's great. Porcello, I love. Eovaldi was a great pickup still. They're clear-cut the best team in baseball right now. I don't know who's going to get them. I just saw the Dodgers. They're looking good. I'll see the Cardinals and the Brewers again next week. They're fine. There's nobody in the National League that I think can contend with Boston. And even in a small series, I just feel like there's too much there and too much depth in that lineup to try to get through.
Finally, Tiger's on the prowl again. He's been close. He's playing great golf. He goes to East Lake. Terrific venue, but not a tour championship, an event known for great fan interest and big galleries, but it was that way yesterday. He shoots 5 under 65. He's tied with Ricky Fowler. There's still a wild scenario that if he wins, he could still win the FedEx Cup championship. A lot of things have to fall into place. The first thing he's got to do is win. You think he can do it this weekend? I think he can. I mean, I'm not saying that he will because this is 29 other incredible golfers in this field, but he's been knocking on the door. I think he likes this golf course. I'm not going to be surprised at all if coming down the back 9 on Sunday, Tiger's in contention.
I mean, he ended up with an eagle on 18 yesterday, right? I mean, he looked really sharp. A couple birdies on the back 9. I think people were kind of thrown back when he bogeyed the first, and I was like, oh no, what's going to happen today? But I mean, the level of consistency is there now. Like I said, he had one bogey on one. And then he was clean pretty much the rest of the way. I think 4 or 5 birdies. He had an eagle in there as well. So I feel like he's playing his best golf. I mean, I don't think I'm saying anything crazy here. He's playing his best golf for the last decade. I think that's pretty obvious to say. But I think he could end up winning this tournament. We've had different guys win this tournament in the past. East Lake, in Atlanta. It's not going to kill him. I think he can play consistently on that course, and I think that gives him a lot of confidence going forward. This is a fun era to be watching Tiger again. There's a level of buzz around Tiger again, and I think that's important for the sport.
Yeah, and the Ryder Cup is going to be spectacular. 2 strong teams, both the Europeans and the Americans in Paris. Adam Amin, folks, he's one of the best in the business. You can catch him tomorrow night on the call of Tennessee and Florida, 6 p.m. Central at Neyland Stadium in Knoxville. Watch for him on different events on ESPN television and on the radio, and he joins us every Friday here, or most Fridays. You can follow him on Twitter at Adam Amin. Thanks so much, as always. Great stuff, Adam.
Anytime, my friend.